What if the place you feel safest was just one letter away from being taken, not for breaking laws, not for hurting anyone, just for planting the wrong flower, or painting your door the wrong shade of blue? They told you this was community, but forgot to mention the control. Because this isn't just a neighborhood, it's a contract. And the price isn't rent, it's silence. It's fear. It's the loss of your own front yard, claimed inch by inch. In the name of rules, welcome to the $350 garden trap, where they don't just fine you for living, they fine you into submission. It didn't start with a fight, it started with a flower. A soft, overgrown edge leaning 4 inches past the line. Not a crime, not a threat, just a lavender bush reaching for light. And then the letter came: violation, $350 due, 10 days, no appeal. The words were polite, but the message was clear. You're no longer in control. You check again. Was there a warning? A notice? Anything? Just bold red print. A blurry photo and a threat hidden in legal phrasing. You feel the flush rise in your chest, not from guilt, from disbelief. Because how do you argue with something that never made sense in the first place? You thought HOAs were for lawns, for fences, for stopping chaos, but this isn't protection. This is performance. Punishment dressed in paper. You drive down the street. 2 neighbors have weeds. Another's trash bin is still out. No fines there, no threats, just yours 4 inches. $350. A message. You email, you ask why. You quote the handbook. You highlight the line where it says, reasonable vegetation is allowed. They reply once. Then stop replying altogether. Because this isn't about the rule. It's about reminding you who gets to decide what rules mean. You say no, you won't pay. Not out of pride. But because this is your home. Your soil, your front step, your 4 inches. And something deep inside you knows if you pay once, you'll pay forever. Then comes the second letter. Non-compliance? A warning. Then the third. Escalation may follow. Vaguer, louder, colder. At night, you sit by your window, watching your own garden like it's contraband. What changed? Just a fine? Just paper? Or something quieter? Like the feeling of being watched. Measured, marked, you plant fewer flowers this season. Keep the grass shorter. Keep the blinds closed. Not because you want to, but because the rules now live in your head. And suddenly, your yard doesn't feel like yours anymore. This is how it begins. Not with drama, but with erosion. Inch by inch, leaf by leaf, line by invisible line. All for a garden that once made you proud. All for 4 inches, they said. You didn't have the right to own. It's removed by morning, deemed unapproved signage. No warning, just silence. There's a man who parks his truck half an inch over the concrete edge. He gets fined every week. Another leaves his garbage can out for 10 minutes too long. Violation notice, but on the next street someone's yard is full of junk. No letters, no fines, no escalation, same rule, different names. Because it's not about the rule, it's about who they want it to apply to. These aren't laws, they're tools. Used by those in charge to remind you they can reach into your yard without ever stepping foot in it. You start to question everything. Should I change my doormat? Are my plants too tall? Did I mow too late? Did I smile too little? Control doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers in architecture. In compliance. In the sound of your neighbor's garage door closing too early, you think you're imagining it. But then you read online, dozens, hundreds, thousands of stories just like yours. Rules that weren't written to protect, but to push. This isn't about lawn care, it's about submission wrapped in landscaping. And when you ask who enforces the rules, they say the board. But who holds the board? Who checks the checker? No answer, just another citation, and the rules keep coming. And the neighborhood stays quiet, and the silence starts to sound like obedience. The board is just neighbors, they said. Volunteers, people like you, people who care, but care for what? You attend your first meeting, plastic chairs, folded arms, agendas printed in size 9 font, decisions already made before you even sat down. They say, we represent the community. But when did the community vote for this? You raise a hand, they glance, then look away. You ask a question. They answer in circles. You point to a rule. They point to each other. Some board members live on the golf course. Others are married to contractors or realtors or insurance adjusters. They don't pay the fines. They don't get the letters. They don't follow the same rules. They hold the power, but not the accountability. You try to run for the board. Find out the election is in 2 weeks. Ballots already printed, nominations already closed. The current president has been there for 7 years. The treasurer? 10. The secretary? No one's sure. They rotate positions, but never rotate out. You ask how they were elected, they say, by majority vote. You ask, who voted? They say, homeowners. You ask, when? They say, it was in the newsletter. You never saw a newsletter. They keep meetings quiet, schedules vague, minutes unposted. Zoom links broken, rooms locked. They say it's open governance, but everything about it feels closed, and yet they can fine you, lien you, sue you, foreclose on you, all without ever looking you in the eye. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it smiles while it tightens the grip. You try again, email, request, ask to speak. They say, submit a form. Then say, that's the wrong form. Then say, you missed the deadline. So you wonder, are these just neighbors? Or landlords in disguise? Are they protecting the neighborhood? Or their own comfort? You look deeper. Some boards hire management companies, private firms that profit from penalties. The more you're fined, the more they earn. And suddenly you see it all clearly. This isn't about community, it's about control, backed by bylaws, shielded by process, fueled by silence, and those who speak up get watched, get flagged, get labeled. You thought the board was a circle, but it's a wall. You try one last time. Attend another meeting, stay until the end. Ask a simple question. Who are you protecting? They don't answer, just adjourn. Coming next, batch 4, fight back or give in. Because once you know who holds the power, the only question left is what you'll do with that truth. The fine came, you didn't pay, not to rebel, not to provoke, but because it wasn't right. 4 inches of garden. A rule they couldn't explain, a silence they called procedure. You expected conversation. What you got was escalation, another letter. Then another, each colder, each louder, each more detached from logic. They say you're non-compliant, you say you're confused. They say you're warned. You ask, warned for what? They stop replying. You talk to neighbors, they nod but step back. Whispers follow your footsteps. Some windows stop opening. You're not just the one who broke a rule, you're the one who didn't say sorry. You try to stay quiet, keep your head down, keep the peace. But peace doesn't mean silence, and silence never meant safety, so you push again. File an appeal. Attend a hearing. Show up with proof. They glance, they skim, they move on. Decision, upheld. You bring photos, laws, even kindness. They bring posture and policy. This isn't a conversation, it's a test. To see if you'll break before they have to bend. The pressure grows. You start to question everything. Was the flower worth it? Was the email too strong? Did you cross a line you didn't see? But deep down, you already know the line doesn't exist. Not really, not for them. You look around. Your lawn is shorter, your voice is softer, your house feels smaller. And still, they send more letters. Now the fine is doubled. Now they mention legal recourse. Now there's talk of liens. You didn't ask for a fight. But they're making you choose. Not between right and wrong, but between silence and survival. Between letting this go or letting yourself disappear inside it. You think about giving in. Just paying, just complying, just disappearing. It would be easier, cheaper, quieter, but something in you won't let go. Something that remembers this is your home. Your soil, your 4 inches of breath, so you stay, you push, you prepare. You learn the rules they never expected you to read. You find your voice in their silence. You plant again, not a flower this time, but the first seed of resistance. Coming next, batch 5. The emotional cost of control, because what they take first isn't money, it's peace, then dignity. Then you. It's not the fine that keeps you up at night. It's the watching, the waiting, the wondering if today you'll get another letter. You start hearing the footsteps. Every time the mail slot clicks, every time a car slows near your driveway, you flinch at envelopes now, even the harmless ones. Even birthday cards feel like threats. Your home, once a quiet sanctuary, now hums with tension, not loud, just always there. Like static behind the walls, you stop planting. You stop decorating, you stop expressing. Because the cost of color is another warning. You used to wave to neighbors. Now you study their faces. Is that sympathy or suspicion? Is that a smile? Or a warning? The space between houses grows wider. Not in feet and trust. You don't feel like a homeowner anymore. You feel like a trespasser on your own property. Every walk to the trash bin feels like a test. Every curtain left open feels like a risk. They haven't taken your home. Not yet, but they've taken your ease, your quiet, your breath. They don't need to enter your door to get inside you. All they need is a rule. A form, a threat that never arrives but always could. You start looking out your window more than living behind it, watching the street, watching for proof that you're not alone, but no one's speaking. Not publicly, because they've all felt it too, even if they won't say it. The board never shouts. They just whisper through the documents. They just tighten with policy. They just erase you politely. And the worst part, you start to question yourself. Maybe you're the problem. Maybe you should have trimmed it. Maybe you should have stayed quiet. Maybe you deserve this. That's the real cost. Not the check you write, but the confidence you lose, the self you surrender, bit by bit, until you no longer fight back, not because you agree, but because you're tired, because it hurts to care this much. You sit on your porch in silence and realize they didn't just fine you, they changed you. You didn't break, so now they bleed you, not with fists. With forms, they send more letters, each longer, each colder, each with a new deadline you never agreed to. You're not just reading mail, you're decoding warnings, you reply. They say your tone is hostile, you soften. They say your argument is unclear. You clarify. They say the matter is closed. You ask for a meeting. They schedule it at 2:15 p.m. On a Tuesday, you work. They call that a missed opportunity. They fine you again, then fine you for the fine. Then charge a processing fee for the fine about the fine you didn't cause. You read every line of the bylaws. 56 pages of fog, contradictions, loops, sentences that say everything and nothing. You realize this wasn't built to resolve conflict. It was built to exhaust you. You email again, this time with citations. Screenshots, precedents. They reply with a paragraph. See section 1.2a. You've already read section 1.2a. It doesn't exist. You ask for clarity. They recommend legal counsel. You contact a lawyer. She charges $275 an hour. She says, "You're not the first." The lien comes next, not a warning. Just a file, stamped, filed, threatening your title. For $350 you still don't owe, you go to court. They don't show up. New date, new forms, new fees. You get a call from a neighbor. "Why is your name on the notice board?" You haven't been outside in 3 days. You spend your weekends not planting, not resting, but scanning PDFs in dim light. Your living room becomes a war room. Your inbox becomes a battleground. Your life becomes a case number. And still, you keep going, not out of anger, not even out of pride. But because if you stop now, they win without ever saying a word, they want you to run out of time, out of money, out of will. They want you tired. Not defeated, just too drained to resist, and that's the cost. Not just dollars, but hours, weekends, mental space you'll never get back. You used to garden, now you file motions. You used to rest, now you argue definitions with strangers paid to ignore you. But deep inside, beneath the paper cuts and fatigue, something else begins to grow. Conviction. Because now, you know the system, you've seen the blueprint, you've felt the weight, and you're still here. Coming next, Batch 7, HOAs across America, the bigger crisis, because this isn't just your story. It's 1,000 front yards under the same quiet war. You thought it was just you, just your garden, your board, your battle, but you were never alone. You were just the first to say it out loud. Scroll long enough, and you'll see them, hundreds of posts, Thousands of voices. One word at the center, HOA, a woman fined for putting up string lights to celebrate her child's recovery. A veteran told to remove his flag or face legal action. A widow threatened with foreclosure because her grass grew too fast after rain. A man evicted for repainting his house the same color it already was, just a different brand of paint. Not one neighborhood, all of them, not one state, all 50. Somewhere in Texas, a man lost his home over a $600 debt he didn't know existed. In Arizona, a retired teacher was sued for keeping her shutters partially open. In Florida, a paid $12,000 in legal fees for a $75 This isn't rare. This isn't random. This is a machine, polished, quiet, beautiful, and it's growing. HOAs now govern over 74 million Americans. That's more than 35 rules they didn't write, enforced by boards they didn't choose. Created to maintain beauty, now used to enforce silence. You'll hear phrases like protecting property values, preserve the neighborhood, cost. Ask the single mom got fined for having too many shoes on her porch. Ask the family who sells groceries. Ask the couple. Ask the This isn't about order. It's about ownership. Not of homes, but of people. Anyone is watching. The HOA is not going no appeal that doesn't cost you time, money, or years. You still are working as community. But real community doesn't fine you for having a soul. Doesn't put flowers behind you some flags. It doesn't turn peace into paperwork. It doesn't make you scared to step outside. You look around and realize this wasn't your story. It was just your turn. HOAs weren't born from neighborhoods. They were born from developers, from blueprints, from contracts written before a single family moved in. You didn't choose this system. You inherited it, built into the deed, baked into the soil. You can't opt out, can't vote it away, can't live in the home without living under the rule. The rules came first, the people came later, and that's the first problem. Developers write the covenants, the restrictions, the architecture of control. They design order, they design silence. They don't know you, but they decide how you'll live. When the last house is sold, they pass the power to a board. But the board doesn't write new rules, it enforces old ones. Ones you never approved. Ones you can't rewrite without a supermajority you'll never gather. The system calls itself democratic, but you've seen it now. Meetings at strange times, votes buried in fine print. Elections you never heard about until they were over. Power, once handed down, never lets go easily. They give you procedures, but not protection. They give you process, but not power. There's no public oversight, no government hotline, no official to call when your home becomes a battlefield. You can sue, but they have lawyers and time and insurance. You have a job and bills and limits. They can fine you without proving you did anything wrong. They can place a lien without stepping inside a courtroom. They can strip value from your property by printing a single letter. You ask who holds them accountable. They say, the community. But the community's afraid. You ask who audits the books. They say, the treasurer is their friend. You ask who protects the homeowner. They say, you signed the agreement. You didn't sign it. You inherited it, you signed a mortgage, not a silence clause. And now you know, this isn't about gardens or fences or parking spots. It's about structure and how structure can become a cage. The language is legal, but the impact is personal. Because when a system is built to preserve power, even the smallest resistance feels like a threat. And when the cost of speaking up is too high, most people stop speaking. And that's how it wins, not by force, but by fatigue, not by punishment, but by pressure measured in paperwork. So when someone asks, why don't you just follow the rules? You'll know the answer, because the rules were never meant to be followed. They were meant to remind you who owns the pen. At first they ignore you, then they remember your name. Not as a neighbor, but as a problem, a line they couldn't erase. So now they circle it. You challenge the process. Now you are the process. Every meeting, your name whispered. Every letter, sharper, you mow your lawn. They measure the edges. You paint your trim. They question the tone. Your violations increase. But nothing's changed. Except you spoke. They say you're uncooperative. They say you're aggressive. They say you create tension in the community. The real tension? It's in the power they're afraid of losing. You attend another meeting. This time they cut your mic. Interrupt your question, move on without a vote, you file a complaint. It never gets posted, never gets read. Disappears into the paperwork graveyard. You knock on a board member's door, they won't answer. But you see the blinds shift. You get an anonymous note, typed, no return address. Be careful who you challenge. Now you're not just fighting policies, you're fighting people with power. And time and no accountability. The management company stops responding. Your fines increase. The lien grows. They say it's standard procedure. But you've seen enough now to know. Procedure is a mask they wear until they don't need it. A neighbor posts about you in the community forum. Calls you toxic, says you're trying to destroy harmony. You've never spoken to them. Another neighbor you once waved to now looks away. You're not a rule breaker, you're a warning. You were never dangerous. But you became inconvenient. And in this system, that's enough. They escalate because they expect you'll cave, that you'll pay, that you'll move, that you'll vanish like the last one. But you don't, and that's what they hate most. Because now it's not just your yard that's under threat. It's the illusion they built around themselves. The illusion that says, we're just keeping the peace. We're just following the rules. We're just neighbors doing our best. You've seen through it, and now, so might others. And that's when they come for you harder, not with fists, but with policy, with reputation, with quiet exclusion. This isn't just retaliation, it's a warning to everyone else. Don't speak, don't fight, don't question. But the more they isolate you, the more people start to notice. The lies crack, the silence phrase, the mask slips, and behind it, just people. Gripping rules like shields. It starts quietly, with one person who doesn't back down. Not loud, not reckless, just uncheckable. They keep showing up. Keep asking questions. Keep speaking after the mic is cut. And someone else hears, then another, then 10 more. Soon the silence isn't quiet anymore. A neighbor knocks, says they've had enough too. Another pulls out letters they've kept for years. Another shows up to the meeting they never dared attend. Now, it's not one voice, it's a pattern, and patterns are harder to ignore. They start sharing documents, policies, emails, screenshots. They learn the system better than the board. They form a group, then a mailing list, then a petition. They demand open elections, fair voting, transparency, not with anger, with strategy. They know the rules now, and how the rules can be turned back on the rule makers.